translation of Sahih Bukhari, Book 22. Actions while praying. Volume 2, Book 22, number 289. Narrated Quraib Mawla ibn Abbas. Abdullah bin Abbas said that he had passed a night in the house of Maimuna, the mother of the faithful believers, who was his aunt. He said, I slept across the bed, and Allah's apostle along with his wife slept lengthwise. Allah's apostle slept till midnight or slightly before or after it. Then Allah's apostle woke up, sat, and removed the traces of sleep by rubbing his hands over his face. Then he recited the last 10 verses of Surat Al-Imran, Quran chapter 2. Then he went towards a hanging leather water container and performed a perfect ablution and then stood up for prayer. Abdullah bin Abbas added, I got up and did the same as Allah's apostle had done and then went and stood by his side. Allah's apostle then put his right hand over my head and caught my right ear and twisted it. He offered 2 rakat, then 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 2 rakat, and then offered 1 rakah witr. Then he lay down till the muaddin came and then he prayed 2 light rakat and went out and offered the early morning Fajr prayer. Number 290. Narrated Abdullah. We used to greet the Prophet while he was praying and he used to answer our greetings. When we returned from Najashi, the ruler of Ethiopia, we greeted him, but he did not answer us during the prayer, and after finishing the prayer he said, in the prayer one is occupied with a more serious matter. Number 292. Narrated Zayd bin Arqam. In the lifetime of the Prophet we used to speak while praying, and one of us would tell his needs to his companions, till the verse, guard strictly your prayers, Quran 2 verse 238 was revealed. After that we were ordered to remain silent while praying. Number 293. Narrated Sahal bin Sa'd. The Prophet went out to effect a reconciliation between the tribes of Bani Amr bin Auf, and the time of the prayer became due. Bilal went to Abu Bakr and said, the Prophet is detained. Will you lead the people in the prayer? Abu Bakr replied, yes, if you wish. So Bilal pronounced the Iqamah and Abu Bakr led the prayer. In the meantime the Prophet came crossing the rows of the praying people till he stood in the first row and the people started clapping. Abu Bakr never looked hither and thither during the prayer, but when the people clapped too much, he looked back and saw the Prophet in the first row. The Prophet waved him to remain at his place, but Abu Bakr raised both his hands and sent praises to Allah and then retreated, and the Prophet went forward and led the prayer. See Hadith number 295 and 296. Number 294. Narrated Abdullah bin Mas'ud. We used to say the greeting, name and greet each other in the prayer. Allah's apostle heard it and said, say, At-tahiyyatu lillahi wa salatu wa tayyibat, Assalamu alayka ayyuha nabiyyu wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Assalamu alayna wa ala ibadillahi salihin, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh. All the compliments are for Allah and all the prayers and all the good things are for Allah, peace be on you, O Prophet, and Allah's mercy and blessings are on you, and peace be on us and on the good pious worshippers of Allah. I testify that none has the right to be worshipped but Allah, and that Muhammad is his slave and apostle. So, when you have said this, then you have surely sent the greetings to every good pious worshipper of Allah, whether he be in the heaven or on the earth. Number 295. Narrated Abu Hurairah, the Prophet said, the saying Subhanallah is for men and clapping is for women. If something happens in the prayer, the men can invite the attention of the Imam by saying Subhanallah, and women, by clapping their hands. Number 296. Narrated Sahal bin Sa'd. The Prophet said, the saying Subhanallah is for men and clapping is for women. Number 297. Narrated Anas bin Malik. While Abu Bakr was leading the people in the morning prayer on a Monday, the Prophet came towards them suddenly, having lifted the curtain of Aisha's house, and looked at them as they were standing in rows and smiled. Abu Bakr tried to come back, thinking that Allah's apostle wanted to come out for the prayer. The attention of the Muslims was diverted from the prayer because they were delighted to see the Prophet. The Prophet waved his hand to them to complete their prayer, then he went back into the room and let down the curtain. The Prophet expired on that very day. Number 297. Narrated Abu Hurairah. Allah's Apostle said, a woman called her son while he was in his hermitage and said, O Jiraj, he said, O Allah, my mother is calling me and I am offering my prayer, what shall I do? She again said, O Jiraj. He said again, O Allah, my mother is calling me and I am offering my prayer, what shall I do? She again said, O Jiraj. He again said, O Allah, my mother is calling me and I am offering my prayer. What shall I do? She said, O Allah, do not let Jiraj die till he sees the faces of prostitutes. A shepherdess used to come by his hermitage for grazing her sheep, and she gave birth to a child. She was asked whose child it was, and she replied that it was from Jiraj and that he had come out from his hermitage. Jiraj said, where is that woman who claims that her child is from me? When she was brought to him along with the child, Jiraj asked the child, O Babuz, who is your father? The child replied, the shepherd. See Hadith number 662. Volume 3. Number 298. Narrated Mu'aqib. The Prophet talked about a man leveling the earth on prostrating, and said, if you have to do so, then do it once. Number 299. Narrated Anas bin Malik. We used to pray with the Prophet in scorching heat, and if someone of us could not put his face on the earth because of the heat, then he would spread his clothes and prostrate over them. Number 300. Narrated Aisha. I used to stretch my legs towards the Qibla of the Prophet while he was praying. Whenever he prostrated he touched me, and I would withdraw my legs, and whenever he stood up, I would restretch my legs. Number 301. Narrated Abu Hurairah. The Prophet once offered the prayer and said, Satan came in front of me and tried to interrupt my prayer, but Allah gave me an upper hand on him and I choked him. No doubt, I thought of tying him to one of the pillars of the mosque till you get up in the morning and see him. Then I remembered the statement of Prophet Solomon, My Lord, bestow on me a kingdom such as shall not belong to any other after me. Then Allah made him Satan return with his head down humiliated. Number 302. Narrated Al-Azraq bin Qais. We were at Al-Awaz fighting the Al-Harura tribe. While I was at the bank of a river, a man was praying and the reins of his animal were in his hands and the animal was struggling and he was following the animal. Shuba, a sub-narrator, said that man was Abu Barza al-Islami. A man from the Kawari said, O Allah, be harsh to the Shaykh. And when the Shaykh Abu Barza finished his prayer, he said, I heard your remark. No doubt, I participated with Allah's Apostle in 6 or 7 or 8 holy battles and saw his leniency, and no doubt, I would rather retain my animal than let it return to its stable, as it would cause me much trouble. Number 303. Narrated Aisha. Once the sun eclipsed and Allah's Apostle stood up for the prayer and recited a very long surah and went bowed for a long while and then raised his head and started reciting another surah. Then he bowed, and after finishing, he prostrated and did the same in the second rak'ah and then said, These lunar and solar eclipses are 2 of the signs of Allah, and if you see them, pray till the eclipse is over. No doubt, while standing at this place I saw everything promised to me by Allah, and I saw paradise and I wanted to pluck a bunch of grapes therefrom, at the time when you saw me stepping forward. No doubt, I saw hell with its different parts destroying each other when you saw me retreating, and in it I saw Amr bin Lai, who started the tradition of freeing animals, set them free in the name of idols. Number 304. Narrated Ibn Umar. The Prophet saw some sputum on the wall facing the Qibla of the mosque and became furious with the people of the mosque and said, during the prayer, Allah is in front of every one of you and so he should not spit, or said, he should not expectorate. Then he got down and scratched the sputum with his hand. Ibn Umar said after narrating, if anyone of you has to spit during the prayer, he should spit to his left. Number 305. Narrated Anas. The Prophet said, whenever anyone of you is in prayer, he is speaking in private to his Lord, and so he should neither spit in front of him nor on his right side but to his left side under his left foot. Number 306. Narrated Sahih bin Sa'd. The people used to offer the prayer with the Prophet with their waist sheets tied round their necks because of the shortness of the sheets, and the women were ordered not to lift their heads till the men had sat straight. Number 307. Nuratadi Abdullah. I used to greet the Prophet while he was in prayer and he would return my greeting, but when we returned from Ethiopia I greeted the Prophet while he was praying but he did not return the greeting, and after finishing the prayer he said, "In the prayer one is occupied with a more serious matter." Number 308. Narrated Jabir bin Abdullah. Allah's Apostle sent me for some job and when I had finished it I returned and came to the Prophet and greeted him but he did not return my greeting. So I felt so sorry that only Allah knows it, and I said to myself, perhaps Allah's Apostle is angry because I did not come quickly. Then again I greeted him but he did not reply. I felt even more sorry than I did the first time. Again I greeted him and he returned the greeting and said, "The thing which prevented me from returning the greeting was that I was praying. And at that time he was on his rahila and his face was not towards the Qibla." Number 309. Narrated Sahih bin Sa'd. The news about the differences amongst the people of Bani Amr bin Auf at Quba reached Allah's Apostle, and so he went to them along with some of his companions to effect a reconciliation. Allah's Apostle was delayed there and the time for the prayer became due. Bilal came to Abu Bakr and said, "O Abu Bakr, Allah's Apostle is detained there and the time for the prayer is due. Will you lead the people in prayer?" Abu Bakr replied, "Yes, if you wish." So Bilal pronounced the Iqamah and Abu Bakr went forward and the people said Takbir. In the meantime, Allah's Apostle came piercing through the rows till he stood in the first row and the people started clapping. Abu Bakr would never look hither and thither during the prayer, but when the people clapped much he looked back and saw Allah's Apostle. The Prophet beckoned him to carry on. Abu Bakr raised both his hands, praised Allah and retreated till he stood in the row, and Allah's Apostle went forward and led the people in the prayer. When he had finished the prayer, he addressed the people and said, "O people, why did you start clapping when something happened to you in the prayer? Clapping is for women. Whenever one is confronted with something unusual in the prayer one should say, Subhanallah." Then the Prophet looked towards Abu Bakr and asked, "What prevented you from leading the prayer when I beckoned you to carry on?" Abu Bakr replied, "It does not befit the son of Al-Quhafa to lead the prayer in the presence of Allah's Apostle." Number 310. Narrated Abu Hurairah. It was forbidden to keep the hands on the hips during the prayer. This is narrated by Abu Hurairah from the Prophet. Number 311. Narrated Abu Hurairah. It was forbidden to pray with the hands over one's hips. Number 312. Narrated Uqba bin al-Harith. I offered the Asr prayer with the Prophet, and after finishing the prayer with Taslim he got up quickly and went to some of his wives and then came out. He noticed the signs of astonishment on the faces of the people caused by his speed. He then said, "I remembered while I was in my prayer that a piece of gold was lying in my house and I disliked that it should remain with us throughout the night, and so I have ordered it to be distributed." Number 313. Narrated Abu Hurairah. Allah's Apostle said, "When the adhan for the prayer is pronounced, then Satan takes to his heels passing wind so that he may not hear the adhan, and when the mu'adhan finishes, he comes back. And when the Iqamah is pronounced he again takes to his heels, and when it is finished, he again comes back and continues reminding the praying person of things that he used not to remember when not in prayer till he forgets how much he has prayed." Abu Salama bin Abdurrahman said, "If anyone of you has such a thing, forgetting the number of rakat he has prayed, he should perform 2 prostrations of sahwi, that is forgetfulness while sitting." Abu Salama narrates this from Abu Hurairah. Number 314. Narrated Abu Hurairah. People say that I narrate too many narrations of the Prophet. Once I met a man during the lifetime of the Prophet and asked him, "Which surah did Allah's Apostles recite yesterday in the Isha prayer?" He said, "I do not know." I said, "Did you not attend the prayer?" He said, "Yes, I did." I said, "I know. He recited such and such surah." Number 315. Narrated Abdullah bin Buhaina. Allah's Apostle once led us in a prayer and offered 2 rakat and got up for the 3rd rakah without sitting after the 2nd rakah. The people also got up with him, and when he was about to finish his prayer, we waited for him to finish the prayer with taslim, but he said takbir before taslim and performed 2 prostrations while sitting and then finished the prayer with taslim. Number 316. Narrated Abdullah bin Buhaina. Allah's Apostle got up after the 2nd rakah of the Zuhr prayer without sitting in between the 2nd and the 3rd rakat. When he finished the prayer he performed 2 prostrations of sahwu and then finished the prayer with taslim. Number 317. Narrated Abdullah. Once Allah's Apostle offered 5 rakat in the Zuhr prayer, and somebody asked him whether there was some increase in the prayer. Allah's Apostle said, "What is that?" He said, "You have offered 5 rakat." So Allah's Apostle performed 2 prostrations of sahwu after taslim. Number 318. Narrated Abu Hurairah. The Prophet led us in the Asr or the Zuhr prayer and finished it with taslim. Dhul Yadayn said to him, "O Allah's Apostle, has the prayer been reduced?" The Prophet asked his companions in the affirmative. So Allah's Apostle I offered 2 more rakat and then performed 2 prostrations of sahwu. Sa'd said, "I saw that Ursa bin Zubair had offered 2 rakat in the Maghrib prayer and finished it with taslim. He then talked, and when he was informed about it he completed the rest of his prayer and performed 2 prostrations, and said, 'The Prophet prayed like this.'" Number 319. Narrated Abu Hurairah. Once Allah's Apostle offered 2 rakat and finished his prayer. So Dhul Yadayn asked him, "Has the prayer been reduced or have you forgotten?" Allah's Apostle said, "Has Dhul Yadayn spoken the truth?" The people replied in the affirmative. Then Allah's Apostle stood up and offered the remaining 2 rakat and performed taslim, and then said takbir and performed 2 prostrations like his usual prostrations, or a bit longer, and then got up. Number 320. Narrated Salama bin Alqama. I asked Muhammad bin Sirin whether tashahhud should be recited after the 2 prostrations of sahwu. He replied, "It is not mentioned in Abu Hurairah's narration." Number 321. Narrated Abu Hurairah. The Prophet offered one of the evening prayers. The sub-narrator Muhammad said, "I think that it was most probably the Asr prayer, and he finished it after offering 2 rakat only. He then stood near a piece of wood in front of the mosque and put his hand over it. Abu Bakr and Umar were amongst those who were present, but they dared not talk to him about that because of excessive respect for him, and those who were in a hurry went out. They said, 'Has the prayer been reduced?' A man who was called Dhul Yadayn by the Prophet said to the Prophet, 'Has the prayer been reduced or have you forgotten?' He said, 'Neither have I forgotten, nor has the prayer been reduced.' He said, 'Certainly you have forgotten.' So the Prophet offered 2 more rakat and performed taslim and then said takbir and performed a prostration of sahwu like his ordinary prostration or a bit longer, and then raised his head and said takbir and then put his head down and performed a prostration like his ordinary prostration or a bit longer, and then raised his head and said takbir. Number 322. Narrated Abdullah bin Buhaina al-Asti. The ally of Bani Abdul Muttalib, Allah's Apostle stood up for the Zuhr prayer, and he should have sat after the 2nd rakah, but he stood up for the 3rd rakah without sitting for tashahhud, and when he finished the prayer he performed 2 prostrations and said takbir on each prostration while sitting, before ending the prayer with taslim. And the people too performed the 2 prostrations with him instead of the sitting he forgot. Number 323. Narrated Abu Hurairah. Allah's Apostle said, "When the call for prayer is made, Satan takes to his heels passing wind so that he may not hear the adhan, and when the call is finished he comes back, and when the iqama is pronounced, Satan again takes to his heels, and when the iqama is finished he comes back again and tries to interfere with the person and his thoughts and say, 'Remember this and that which he has not thought of before the prayer,' till the praying person forgets how much he has prayed. If anyone of you does not remember whether he has offered 3 or 4 rakat, then he should perform 2 prostrations of sahwu while sitting." Number 324. Narrated Abu Hurairah. Allah's Apostle said, "When anyone of you stands for the prayers, Satan comes and puts him in doubts till he forgets how many rakat he has prayed. So if this happens to any one of you, he should perform 2 prostrations of sahu while sitting. Number 325. Narrated Quraib. I was sent to Aisha by Ibn Abbas, Al-Mizwar bin Makrama and Abdurrahman bin Azar. They told me to greet her on their behalf and to ask her about the offering of the 2 rakat after the Asr prayer and to say to her, we were informed that you offered those 2 rakat and we were told that the Prophet had forbidden offering them. Ibn Abbas said, I along with Umar bin al-Khattab used to beat the people whenever they offered them. I went to Aisha and told her that message. Aisha said, go and ask Salama about them. So I returned and informed them about her statement. They then told me to go to Salama with the same question with which he sent me to Aisha. Salama replied, I heard the Prophet forbidding them. Later I saw him offering them immediately after he prayed the Asr prayer. He then entered my house at a time when some of the Ansari women from the tribe of Bani Haram were sitting with me, so I sent my slave girl to him having said to her, stand beside him and tell him that Salama says to you, O Allah's Apostle, I have heard you forbidding the offering of these 2 rakat after the Asr prayer but have seen you offering them. If he waves his hand then wait for him. The slave girl did that. The Prophet beckoned her with his hand and she waited for him. When he had finished the prayer he said, O daughter of Bani Umayyah, you have asked me about the 2 rakat after the Asr prayer. The people of the tribe of Abdul Qais came to me and made me busy and I could not offer the 2 rakat after the Zuhr prayer. These 2 rakat that I have just prayed are for those missed ones. Number 327. Narrated Esma, I went to Aisha and she was standing praying and the people, too, were standing praying, so I said, what is the matter with the people? She beckoned with her head towards the sky. I said, is there a sign? She nodded intending to say, yes. Number 328. Narrated Aisha the wife of the Prophet. Allah's Apostle during his illness prayed in his house sitting, whereas some people followed him standing, but the Prophet beckoned them to sit down. On completion of the prayer he said, the Imam is to be followed. So, bow when he bows, and raise your head when he raises his head. See Hadith number 657 volume 1 for taking the verdict.